For you, the listeners of My JavaScript Story, Loot Crate is offering an opportunity to save 10% on any new subscription at lootcrate.com. Just enter the promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings. Loot Crate is one of my favorite things. Every month I get a box in the mail, costs less than $20, and it comes with all kinds of goodies. I have stuff from, just looking at my shelf, Batman, Spider-Man, Ninja Turtles, Back to the Future, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and much, much more. So if you're a geek, a gamer, anything like that, and you want cool stuff to put around your office, cool t-shirts, comic books, etc., then definitely check out Loot Crate. To save 10% on your new subscription, go to lootcrate.com/Ruby. Again, that's lootcrate.com/Ruby to save 10% on any new subscription. Enter the promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings. Hey everybody, and welcome to another My JavaScript Story. This week we're talking to David Luecke. I think I got close. Now, David, do you want to give everyone just a brief introduction, remind them who you are? I don't think we've had you on the show for a while.
Yeah, so I'm David. You got pretty close. Last name is Luecke. It's I got that from Germany. And I'm right now with a Canadian company called Bullish Ventures. We build APIs and mobile and web applications for people using our open source tools. And right now we actually had the opportunity to work a little bit more on product work, which is nice. We're 4 people, me in Vancouver, 2 in Calgary, Alberta, and 1 other person in Argentina. And it's a quite interesting time to work in JavaScript right now. And the last time I was on the show was a while ago, and I don't believe I said that much because it was a panel about jQuery plugin I've written a long time ago to generate forms. And it was an interesting project. We discussed on the tools that we can use for generating HTML forms. And yeah, I think in a panel, I'm usually more the kind of person that listens quietly. So yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to talk a little more this time.
Awesome. Yeah, you were on episode 150. We talked about OIMs, and we had Richard Kennard and Geraint Luff and you on. And yeah, it's interesting to just dig in and see where people come from and what they've done. And yeah, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. We want to hear what makes you tick. And you know, there are people out there that are going to hear your story and they're going to be like, oh, I could do that, or I could be like that, or I have something in common with him. And that's what we're after here. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump in with our questions. I sent you the questions ahead of time, so hopefully you've had a few minutes to think about it, or a few weeks to think about it. But the first question is how did you get into coding?
So I grew up on a goat farm in Germany. So Initially I didn't have that much, wasn't that exposed to technology and computers. I got my first computer when I was 12. Before that, I was tinkering a lot with electronics. At the beginning, we just talked about you being at the CES and looking at all those tools for kids to learn programming. I learned or got familiar with technology by actually taking stuff apart and usually not being able to put it back together. But it was very informative nonetheless. And when I got my first computer, I started programming with what was the first real influence was probably Delphi, which is an IDE that uses Pascal as its programming language. And in hindsight, I think it's still I don't know if it's still around, but it was a good IDE because you could build user interfaces visually, and it was really easy to get up and running and get started quickly. And I started programming there. I did some stuff I actually looked at a couple of weeks ago, again, with image processing. And I looked at it and it was sometimes you look at an old project and like, oh my God, that's horrible. What have I done? And the other times you look at it and think that actually was surprisingly interesting on what I've done back then.
Right.
So I've done some image processing and just built a thumbnail viewer, and eventually, when we got online, build a tool that helps manage frequently asked questions about the programming language. Mm-hmm. And that's in Germany. So when I turned 18 back then, you still got drafted for military service.
Right.
But you can also do an alternative service and say, I don't want to serve in the military. I want to do something else more social. So I signed up to help a computer science student. He had a muscular atrophy. So I was helping him as just videotaping lectures at university and things like that. My actual plan before that was to do an apprenticeship, which is still pretty common in Germany. So a lot of people, you can do a software development apprenticeship. You don't have to go to university. But he said, come on, what do you have to lose? Just sign up for university and see if you can get in. The problem was that my marks from high school weren't that great, so I wasn't that optimistic. But I did get in, and it turned out to be a great choice. My marks in university were a lot better than in high school. And that's also how I ended up in Canada for totally non-work or programming related reasons.
Cool. So it's interesting. I mean, a lot of people, usually when I talk to people who get in and they get a computer science degree, it's, oh, well, I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do, since I was a teenager or before. And it sounds like you were more along the lines of, well, I don't think I can get in to get my degree, so I think I'm just going to, I'll go do an apprenticeship or something, and it just kind of worked out the other way. I'm curious, though, and this is a conversation that I have with a lot of people, how critical do you think a computer science degree is?
Personally, I really enjoyed doing the degree just because it was really interesting to be digging down to the very basics of things. Uh-huh. And I think I'm probably in a smaller camp of people that would say that it is important to an extent to get some kind of a degree. To me, it's always been important to get down to the bottom of how something works.
Right.
Because that makes it a lot easier to understand how all those things fit together. In JavaScript, we have a lot of frameworks, right? If you learn the basics of the language and how the HTTP protocol works and things like that, it's a lot easier to pick up on a new framework and look at it and be a little more naturally pick it up. So to me, I think personally it was very, very helpful because you just had some of the things you don't like learning about or you don't like doing, but that are pretty essential for a basic understanding of how computers and programming languages work. Uh-huh. It's tough to learn that through personal discipline. I don't know if I would have had that discipline to do that, to always learn the very basics of the things that I'm working with every day. So I think it's still a personal preference, but I wouldn't rule it out categorically and say, no, you don't need a computer science degree.
I think it's an interesting conversation to have. I mean, I have a computer engineering degree, and it's funny because I have some people and they're like, well, do you think you needed to get it? And part of me thinks, well, I don't know what it's like not to have it.
Yeah, it's true.
So I don't know if it, I don't know how much difference it makes, right? Compared to somebody who doesn't have one. I see people coming in and being successful without them. But at the same time, yeah, you go through kind of a disciplined curriculum on that. And you learn a lot of the things that you're talking about there. At the same time, I learned a lot of things in my computer engineering degree that I never used once I graduated. So it's kind of a, I don't know. I see the argument both ways. I don't think either way is the wrong way to do it. And I think really what it just comes down to is if that fits where you want to wind up and it fits how you learn these things. And it sounds like you're more the type of person that wants to have the deep understanding and a regimented way to learn it. And for other people, they just want to go out and kind of cowboy their way through it. Yeah. And yeah, it just depends on which way is really going to work out for you. I kind of want to move on to the next question, just to because I'm curious. How did you get into JavaScript then?
So I did do some website development, and back then, if you did that, you also did your own hosting, which so that's part of it. How I actually got into JavaScript was actually during my university. I was working for a company. It's not really an internship. It's more a working student kind of thing. So next to going to university, I also worked for a company that was located directly on the BMW headquarters in Munich.
Oh, nice.
So you could actually walk through the engine manufactory and see how they put together the M series engines. So that was pretty interesting. Nice. And what they did was they build web-based tools to do quality analysis. So if you're drilling a hole in the engine, you have to make sure that it is within a certain tolerance. And the software they built basically took all the measurements and did an analysis and said, oh, this is out of tolerance. You probably have to change the tool and things like that. And back then, it was all mostly Java applications that were server-side rendered. And the way to build dynamic applications was Google Web Toolkit.
Oh, wow.
I probably have to explain that because a lot of people might not know that anymore. It's basically a Java framework that you can use to put UI components together. And then it compiled it into JavaScript so that you could build dynamic applications. And I was back at that time, I was learning about design patterns in Java and a lot of the technical side of things. And the Google Web Toolkit approach kind of felt kind of weird because I always thought, well, eventually you'll end up having to write JavaScript anyway. So I started doing some research, and what it was called back then, and the approach that I really liked was called thin server architecture. I think by now we're just calling it APIs.
Right.
And having your JavaScript application from the client talk to it. That I found super interesting. It's actually been with me ever since I first read up on that. And I thought, this is a great way. I'm going to build small, thin server applications / APIs and then have my JavaScript in the browser talk to those and do all the things that I would usually do in Java on the server. And I started doing some research, and it turned out that such things as testing frameworks, build tools, and etc. It was in 2007. Did not really exist to the extent that we know it from Java. The only thing that I found, two things that I found, was Dojo, which were pretty much the pioneers in almost everything JavaScript, large JavaScript application related, and JavaScript MVC, which was, I think, pretty much the first client-side framework in the style of things like Backbone and Angular. It was modeled after, especially the first versions, Ruby on Rails. So it was basically JavaScript, Ruby on Rails for JavaScript. And as your model layer, instead of talking to database, you were talking to your thin server API. And I really liked that approach. It was a lot to take in at first, but it really helped in building that kind of application that I had to and wanted to build at that company, because there were bigger, more dynamic applications that you couldn't just do with jQuery, which was the big known thing at that point in time. So that's what I ended up with, and I've been working with that framework, which is now Done.js and CanJS for a long time. It's been around for a long time too. I've been doing a lot more React Native, so the front end stack changed a little bit, but the whole idea of separating and building JavaScript applications, especially on a large scale and making them maintainable and testable, has been with me ever since, pretty much.
That's interesting. And we've done shows. It's funny you mentioned all these different technologies. We've done shows on all of them. We've had Dylan and Kit from Dojo. We've had, I'm trying to remember who we had from Done.js and CanJS, but we've talked about all these different things. And their evolution through JavaScript. Justin Meyer is who we had from, Done.js and Can.js. And yeah, it's just interesting to see how this has all evolved. I mean, I remember looking at Dojo way back in the day, kind of as an alternative to jQuery. And, it's like, oh, what is this all about? And then, I got sidetracked with other work and never actually did anything with it. But it's interesting to see how these things have evolved, and they're still around, which is also kind of interesting. Not just from the standpoint of, oh, we've got these old technologies that are still, out there kicking it around, but, they've evolved just like these other JavaScript frameworks have. And it just makes for really, really interesting growth and areas to learn in JavaScript if you're out there looking for something a little bit different. So what projects have you worked on that you're proud of in JavaScript?
So the most notably right now is probably Feathers.js. It's we call it a REST and real-time API layer. It's a JavaScript framework that works in Node and React Native in the browser. I'm debating if I'm going to take a step back and tell you how it came to be, or if I'm going to explain what it does.
But I think start with what it does, and then we can
exactly. So
where it came from.
So what it does is it's basically it's generally put into the category of web frameworks like Meteor and Express. It's kind of a little less and more than that at the same time. So what it does is it provides an architecture for you to build around in order to either provide APIs or consume them, and also get real-time updates from those APIs if you're using a protocol that supports that, like WebSockets. And it also has a mechanism for implementing certain workflows. If you, for example, create a user, you want to send a welcome email, and it has a mechanism to protocol independently create those different workflows and implement those using different protocols. So right now it supports REST HTTP. So you can create it's kind of, I like how minimalistic it is, because it's much like Express, and it builds on top of Express as a server. So you can use all of Express functionality, but instead of having to always write all those different routes and then make your database calls, all of that is abstracted in this concept of services that basically just provide CRUD, like create, find, get, patch, and remove functionality. And because those are all standardized, it can also automatically send real-time updates to clients. Nice. And I'm really happy with how they've turned out, and there's a lot going on right now in that area.
Interesting. So how did you come around to creating this?
So that came again back from university when I was looking, like I mentioned, the thin server architecture idea. And I was tasked with my final thesis. Usually you write it with the company you're with, and they give you a topic, and then you do some free work for them. I didn't want to do that. I had an idea of writing about an abstraction layer for different remote procedure call protocols. That was in Java. And the idea was basically to take SOAP, which nobody uses anymore. It used to be an acronym for Simple Object Access Protocol, but then they dropped that name because it turned out to not be simple at all.
I built some SOAP apps. I can definitely relate. Yeah.
Remote method, Java remote method invocation protocol, XML remote procedure call, and the third one was a fairly new concept that was called representational state transfer, or we all know it as REST now. And the idea was to just have the same Java interface that is exposed through all those different protocols. And I implemented that in Java. I wrote about 3 times as much about it than I needed to, and that was back in 2010, and then I moved to Canada for totally unrelated reasons. And Node came around, and I saw that was a great opportunity to re-implement the same or a similar thing on a web framework kind of level. And Node turned out to also be a great platform for real-time updates. And the whole architecture of using those CRUD services turned out to fit really well into also being able to send real-time updates. So if you call the create method, I kind of know that I created something, so I can send a created event to all the clients that are connected to a real-time connection. And the same with updates and removed items and things like that. And it turned out to work really well for Node, so it's been around for a bit. And 2 years ago, a friend, Eric, that I'm at Bullish with now, and we ran a JavaScript meetup in Calgary for a long time. We looked at it and we were like, okay, are we gonna just use this as a pet project, or do we want to invest some time into it and write some more complete documentation and things like that, which is what we ended up doing, and made an announcement of version 2, which in reality didn't change that much, but it changed a lot of the perception and how it's viewed. And it had it had some database adapters, so you could stand up a full API in 20 lines of code. And that was, I think, quite appealing to people.
Right. Well, cool. So what are you working on now?
My favorite, the most fun project. So I'm still working on Feathers. We're trying to just improve small things, but not change it significantly anymore. It's been fairly stable, which is kind of nice. But my most fun project that I'm working on right now on the side is what I dub My Sam. It's a natural language processing platform. Well, that's actually a little too technical. What it actually is a digital assistant that you can, in the browser, that you can write plugins for and talk to, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, been a lot of fun for me, because for the longest time you program, and then when it works, you're happy that it works. When it doesn't, you're mad that it doesn't work like you wanted it to, right? This one it's using machine learning, so you can teach it new skills. And it was interesting to me because it was the first time in a while that I was surprised that the software did something that I didn't expect it to do, and it was still the right thing. So it's a really, really interesting field to me, and a really interesting opportunity, and how we might be programming in the future. Just to not having to program each individual step, but being more of a teacher to your software, and being able to change the software while it's running and changing how it's behaving while it's running. It's a fun little project. I'm just writing up some documentation, because that is usually the most work and the hardest thing to do well. But hopefully I'll be able to just write a publishing post about that soon.
Cool. Very cool. Now, is all that written in JavaScript?
Yes, it works. Initially, it had a Node server and an Electron application. Then Google ripped out the voice recognition in the Electron application.
Okay.
So I changed it to run in the browser only, because unfortunately a lot of browsers hide the voice recognition behind a flag. And the only one that has it built in is Chrome. And then the Node server, it turned out that all the machine learning and natural language processing parts, which is the beauty of JavaScript, can actually run in the browser just as well. So you can now run the natural language processing part either in the browser or on a Node server. But the default behavior is for everything to just run in the browser itself. So it's all written in JavaScript, and you can write plugins in JavaScript and HTML. And yeah, just make it do new things. I had talking about home automation, which is actually a very fun thing to do if you're talking to your browser and it turns on the lights.
Yeah,
it's kind of that's the kind of thing that I found really interesting, instead of just having the pre-done little black box that does things or doesn't. Being able to make it behave the way you want it to and listen to the commands that you train it to listen to.
Makes sense. All right. Well, the last part of the show is picks. Do you have some things you want to shout out about on the show?
Do you run your own freelance business? Or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side? Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere, available from any device on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says pay me now. And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
Yeah, so my first one was another podcast. It's called idieyouDie.com. They are talking about, they're saying, considering dark alternative music, which is, I really like all kinds of industrial, dark electronic, things like that. They're talking about many of those things because there's a lot of interesting things happening in North America right now. And yeah, it's great for me to keep up to date, and I highly recommend, if you're kind of interested in that kind of music, to listen into them. And my second pick, actually I read last week, it was a longer post that was called How to Fix Facebook Before It Fixes Us. If you haven't read it yet, I found it really interesting. It was very well researched. There was a lot of detail in it, and just more critical thought about what does it mean if one company has so much of our attention, social interactions, and in our field also developer skill. So it's a longer read, but I found it really interesting.
Awesome. I'm going to go in with a few picks of my own. So as you mentioned, we were talking about CES beforehand, and there were a whole bunch of just really cool things at CES. And some of them I think I'm probably going to invite people onto the different shows to talk about, and some of them I'm going to, I'm going to highlight them. I have probably 20 or 30 videos of different products from CES that I'm going to cover. But some of my favorites, just to throw things out. In fact, I think I'm just going to throw out the ones that I got demo units on. So one of them is called the Merge Cube, and it's an AR toy. You can actually get it at Walmart right now. And what it does is it has this cube, and then it has an app for your phone. And, so you point your phone's camera at the cube, and then you can pick the different apps you want to play. So it has a whole bunch of games and educational things that you can do with this AR cube. And they also sell the AR VR headsets that you slide your phone into, so you can run it that way if you want. And that was really cool. Incidentally, the company also had kind of a laser tag AR or VR system that they had put together. And essentially what it is it's the laser tag gun. And so you slide your phone into it, and then it uses your phone's accelerometer to, pick up the movement of the gun. And then it gives you a VR setting, and then you have, the dummies that you're shooting at, and they shoot back. And so, you're running around this virtual environment, in your, AR, VR setting. Anyway, it was a really fun toy. And I think that's coming out later this year. So, yeah, I'm going to pick that as well. And I don't think I have a video for that one, but anyway, I'll see if I can find a link for it. The other ones that I got, there's a company called Primo, and they have a little robot. It's geared more toward kids ages like 4 to 8, and it's a programming toy. And there were a whole bunch of those at CES. And I know people are interested in, how do I show my kid code, or how do I teach my kid some of the thinking skills that go into writing code. And so what this one is it has little plastic blocks that they fit into these holes in the board, and so you have like 3 rows of 4 holes that you stick the blocks into, and then the blocks all do different things like move forward, turn right, turn left, and then there's another block that is run the sequence in the 4th row, and there are 4 holes in that 4th row, and so you can essentially build a function in that 4th row, and then you can tell it to run the function, which is kind of fun. And then they also come with manuals and kind of a fabric pad that you put on the floor. So they gave me their expansion for Big City. And so the idea is that it has a story in there, you know, you or your robot, I haven't opened it yet, you know, has to go to the grocery store. And so here's your apartment, here's the grocery store. You have to program your, you know, so the turn rights and turn lefts and everything to get from your apartment to the grocery store and things like that. And so it does a whole bunch of interesting ones. They also have mats that don't have the color on them, so you can color them with fabric markers and stuff. And that was a really cool toy. And then the last one that I got is from a company called Octagon, and you can get these cards also today on Amazon and stuff. And they're augmented reality cards. So the ones that they gave me are the professions. So you can like, you have the librarian or the king or whatever. And, you know, my kids were just having a great time. Just, you know, you just point your phone's camera at the card and then it shows it. The demo that they had at CES, they showed me the animals. And so they showed me the monkey card, and then they pulled out the banana card, and the monkey, the VR or AR monkey would follow the banana around the desk. And then when it caught up to the bananas, it would pull one off and actually, you know, peel it and eat it. And so anyway, just really, really fun stuff. You know, I got into a whole bunch of other IR, augmented reality stuff and programmable stuff, IoT stuff, because I know that people are interested in that stuff. So if you're interested in what I saw at CES, some of this stuff is just kind of cool. Oh, gee, I'm really interested in this stuff. And some of it is stuff that have APIs or SDKs or whatever, depending on if you're a mobile developer or a web developer, how you can interact with these different systems. So definitely check those out. Those videos should be up by the time this goes up. So just go to devchat.tv/c/devchattv, and you should be able to find the playlist for CES 2018. And we'll have a whole bunch of stuff there. I just had a great time looking at all that stuff and meeting all of the innovative people that are there, you know, doing interesting stuff. So anyway, I'm also probably going to do a video, just kind of a redux or recap of CES, just to kind of give an idea. Okay, look, these are the trends that I saw. These are the things that have kind of gone to the point where the big companies have picked up the technology and are developing it in their products. And then these are the things that I see that are coming up, you know, with the newer inventions and newer things that are out there, you know, because there were new medical devices that were really interesting to look at and things like that, you know, and just kind of open that up. But yeah, I also did a few videos from vendors like Netgear and stuff like that. So if you're looking at routers or, you know, connected devices that do, you know, expand your Wi-Fi network or connect nicely with those things, that I covered a lot of that as well. So anyway, I guess this is an overall pick for CES, but anyway, had a ton of fun. And, you know, just want to thank a lot of those vendors for, you know, being willing to show me what they've got. And some of these companies are also going to be sending me review units of their stuff. So if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about them, just keep an eye on that channel, because I'll probably add to it as the year goes on. Two other vendors that I also got products from that I'm going to be trying out. One I got before the show and the other after the show. They're both wireless headphones, kind of like the Apple AirPods. But, you know, they have different levels of functionality. One is from Bragi. It's the Bragi Pro or the Dash Pro. And those actually have like the kinds of sensors that you get on the back of the Apple Watch or the Fitbit that, you know, get your pulse and stuff. And they do a ton of stuff. And I'm going to be doing a review on that. And then I got some other ones from a company called Crazy Baby. And they're also the wireless headphones. And they both connect to your phone via Bluetooth. Really, really cool stuff. So if you're looking for something like that, you either have an Android phone or you don't want to spend the money on AirPods for one reason or another, or you're just looking at your options, I'm hoping to be able to give you some options that way. All right, so before we wrap up, how do people find you online if they want to follow you or see what you're working on these days?
It's on GitHub and Twitter. It's DAFFL. I don't tweet out that much, but when somebody talks to me, I'll talk back. So I'm available probably best through those two channels.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for coming and talking to us. It's always interesting just to see, the progression through a lot of these things. And you've done some things that I think a lot of other people think about doing but haven't done, like, writing a framework and things like that, or at least being involved in writing a framework, because I know that a lot of those are a team effort. But anyway, just want to thank you also for your contributions to the JavaScript community. And we will come back next week with another story.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.